Hello everyone. This is Vivek Bajaj, your friend, co-founder of Stockage and Elon Markets. Friends, a month ago I recorded this phenomenal content on banking sector. I got 100% understanding of how banking sector works, what kind of banks are there, what kind of potential we have in banking, and should we invest in banking sector or not. It was a great learning session for me, and I'm sure that people who have gone through that session would acknowledge that this session was extremely concept building. I promised in that session with the same speaker that we will also talk about NBFC, which is an natural extension for us to talk after banking discussion and give you a complete understanding of how NBFC sector works. I want to invite again our friend Arvind Datta to come over and talk about the NBFC sector as a continuation of where we left after the banking sector. Hello, Arvind.
Hello Vivek ji, how are you doing?
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm better now after seeing you. I hope you're also doing great.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. It's great to connect with you again.
Thank you. Arvind, the one which we recorded on the banking, people who saw it really got enthralled with the concept understanding. So thank you so much for that fantastic learning content. I'm sure that content will go a long way in empowering youth, particularly who want to understand banking in detail. And today I'm very excited about NBFC because I truly believe that this sector has the potential to make India what it is and it could become. So let's get the ball rolling. But before that, still want you to talk about yourself, a brief background about you, what you have done, and then we drill down into the bank, into the NBFC sector.
So basically talking about myself in brief, I've been a career banker for more than 24 years now. Working in the retail banking sector. I also did before became a banker. I wanted to become an army officer. I did 16 months of military training at the Indian Military Academy. That was around 31 years ago in July 1990 to October 91. I've done MBA Finance from Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi. I worked with HDFC Bank and Citi in India. I was head of credit for North India for retail asset products at Citi, based out of Delhi. And then I moved to UAE for around 11 years. I was head of credit for retail and SME loans at First Abu Dhabi Bank UAE. My key areas of specialization are risk management, credit underwriting, and fraud management. In my last assignment with Noor Bank in Dubai as a senior vice president and head of business management, I was responsible for strategy, finance, and analytics for the retail bank. I currently consult for banks, NBFCs, and a few consulting firms. So that's about myself in a nutshell.
My goodness, this is illustrious. Awesome. I mean, you are a role model for a lot of people who want to work in this sector. I'm very impressed with your profile, and I'm very glad that we are talking about this whole financial sector overall. So let me make
Thank
you
you.
the presenter. Let me
Yeah.
make you the presenter, and let's get into the NBFC sector.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
this is your profile.
let's begin with the structure of NBFCs. As you know, NBFCs are regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. So just to give you a brief background, how many NBFCs exist today or what is the structure of NBFCs? On one side, we have all India financial institutions that are four in number, which is your NABARD, your SIDBI, your Exim Bank, and your NHB, which is your National Housing Bank. Then you have your non-banking finance companies. As of last count, some 9,600 plus finance companies existed in India, which are registered with the RBI, out of which you have various classifications, like you have NBFCs deposit taking, which are around 64 in number. Then you have NBFCs non-deposit taking, which was almost 9,425 at last count. And you have ARCs or asset reconstruction companies that buy out NPAs and then resolve and collect the money basically from those NPAs. Those are 28 ARCs registered in India. And you have housing finance companies or HFCs, which are purely into home finance. There are approximately 100 odd companies that are in the HFC space. And on the other side, you have primary dealers. These are basically dealers who kind of buy and sell government bonds, etc. So there were 21 primary dealers. 14 of them were bank primary dealers, and standalone primary dealers were almost 7. So in under NBFCs, you have systemically important NBFCs that RBI classifies as NBFC. So almost 292 NBFCs are classified as systemically important by RBI. And there are other NBFCs which are non-systemically important, which are almost 9,130 plus. So this is a brief about the number of NBFCs registered in India with the RBI. So moving on to the next slide. Yeah.
Arvind, we are going to discuss each category, right, in some length.
So we will cover mostly your lending NBFCs, which is your bulk of 9,600 NBFCs that
Okay,
we are going to
okay.
talk about, and
Joseph,
HFCs basically.
if you allow me, one question I want to ask. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
regarding primary dealers,
Yes.
bank primary dealers and non and typically banks who are not primary dealers. So
Yeah.
technically, banks can be non-primary dealers as well.
No. So when a bank takes a license from primary dealership of bonds and government securities, so they are classified as NBFCs owned by the banks dealing in government securities,
Okay, okay.
right? So
And standalone.
standalone entities who take a license to deal in government bonds, etc., can be your non-primary dealers.
So can you give one or two examples of those standalone primary dealers?
Let me give you one example of a bank primary dealer. Like most of the banks have their desks in bond trading. Like one company which is listed is PNB Gilts, right?
Yeah.
It's a subsidiary of Punjab National Bank, and it's a primary dealer of bonds. But I can't think of right now any name which is a non-bank
Okay.
primary
Okay.
dealer. So as it comes along, I will probably share the name with you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Not a
sure.
problem.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So let's continue.
So moving on, classification of NBFCs by their various activities that RBI lists down. So there are 11 classifications for NBFCs by RBI, right? So there is an investment and credit company, which activity is related to lending and investment. So most of the companies that you see today, which are into lending and investment, are classified under investment and credit company. So then
Hmm.
you have the second structure is a infrastructure finance company. So this finance company or NBFC it deals into infrastructure loans. They will only lend to project finance and to infrastructure financing projects, basically, right?
Hmm.
The,
Hmm.
the third one is systemically important core investment company, which deals into equity shares, preference shares, debt, or loans in group companies. So it's like a group holding company for a corporate, right? So they hold their equity stakes in various group companies, etc. They invest in their equities, etc. Right? So then you have infrastructure debt fund NBFC. So they basically facilitate long-term debt for infrastructure projects. Then you have the on the fifth number is your microfinance institutions. So any NBFC that does small ticket loans to the economically disadvantaged groups is classified as MFIs. Then you have factoring NBFCs, right? NBFCs which acquire receivables and discount those receivables are called factoring NBFCs. And then you have the non-operating financial holding company. So which are like facilitation of a promoter groups in setting up new banks. So when a new bank is being set up, a non-operative holding company has to be set up as per RBI. Right. Then you have a mortgage guarantee company, which kind of guarantees your mortgage guarantee business. So this is a specialized activity, and only a specialized NBFC can undertake this activity as regulated by the RBI or allowed by the RBI. Then you have an account aggregator NBFCs, which is like collecting and providing information about a customer's financial assets in the consolidation, organized and retrieval manner to customers or others specified by a customer. So these are account aggregators which collect or collate information about customers, and they provide a consolidated information to to the customers or even to the lenders at times, right? So peer-to-peer lending platforms again is classified as a NBFC, which is like providing an online platform to bring lenders and borrowers together to help mobilize funds. And then you have the housing finance companies, which are basically financing homes and loan against property. So
Okay.
any questions on this?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a question for difference between point number two, which is infrastructure finance company and
Yeah.
infrastructure debt fund.
Okay, so infrastructure finance company will collect more mobilized deposits or money and then lend to infrastructure projects, right?
Okay.
So they can either be basically a equity investor or they can be a lender to those
Okay.
projects, right?
Okay.
Whereas a infrastructure debt fund is basically a company that mobilizes or channels long-term debt into infrastructure projects and charges a fee. They don't take the risk on their books,
Okay. Okay. Got
right?
it.
Right.
Fine.
So moving on from here, so I have listed down some points that how the NBFC sector has evolved over the last 30-40 years. It is in random order, no such order basically. Like NBFCs came under RBI regulation in 1964. That was the first time RBI started regulating NBFCs. The first housing finance company was formed in 1977, which was your HDFC Limited, as we all know. The minimum capital requirements at some point in time, RBI increased to 2 crores. The governance framework was also established by RBI because there was earlier no governance framework, no regulations, etc. Anyone can open an NBFC even without registering with RBI, right? So in 2003, RBI converted one NBFC into a universal bank, which was Kotak Mahindra Finance, which converted into Kotak Mahindra Bank. Then at some point in time in the last 20 years, 100% foreign direct investment was allowed into NBFCs by RBI. And in a few years ago, 4-5 years ago, NBFCs transitioned to banks. So there were 10 small finance bank licenses given out by RBI, 11 payment bank licenses, and 2 universal bank licenses were issued by RBI in the last 5-6 years. Then RBI also classified any NBFC with over 100 crores of assets as systemically important entities, and there were also ALM guidelines issued by NBFC over the last few years, right?
Okay.
So
ALM,
this,
ALM stands for asset liability management.
yes, asset liability management,
Okay. Okay. Great.
right? So moving on, basically, what is the role of NBFC in the economy? As we know, NBFCs are extension of banks, and we also call them shadow banks, right? So
Yeah.
financial inclusion and penetration to underbanked segment of the society, where banks cannot reach out, NBFCs reach out to far-flung areas and to rural areas to kind of extend credit to the underpenetrated or the underbanked segment of the society. Improving access to customers with limited access to credit, because a lot of times banks are hesitant to give credit to the informal sector where people do not have complete documents, right? So NBFC step in and they kind of cater to this segment of the society. NBFCs also complement the banking sector in reaching out to far-flung areas, as I said earlier. uh, they also finance small and medium enterprises which do not qualify for bank lending. So most of the time, people do not have their audited balance sheets or are not in that category where they need a tax audit, etc. And they do not maintain proper financials. So it's very difficult for banks to cater to these sector of SMEs. So this is where NBFCs step in, and based on cash flow, they decide to lend to these segment of SMEs basically. SMEs also finance micro loans to bottom of the pyramid section of the society. NBFCs also cater to niche segments like vehicle finance and other asset products. So there are sectoral NBFCs which only do, let's say, a vehicle finance like a Shriram Transport Finance, or only gold loan financing like you have Muthoot Finance or Manapuram Finance, right? Most of these loans that NBFCs give are also qualify for priority sector lending. So banks also buy out these loans to meet their priority sector lending targets. And NBFCs also enter into a co-lending arrangement with banks, right? So they can enter into a co-lending arrangement where 20% they contribute or share, and 80% is contributed by the bank. So they get into this a third arrangement or contract where they jointly lend to a borrower. Most of the risk is taken by the banks on these borrowers. And NBFCs, as we all know, generate a lot of employment and contribute to the growth of the economy.
Okay, fair point.
Yeah. Moving on, I have shown you the trend of AUM or loan growth of NBFCs and HFCs in the last decade or so. So beginning from FY 200 and 2010, NBFC sector had a asset base or loan book of, let's say, 4.6 lakh crores, which in FY20 by H1 of FY20 was 23.5 lakh crores. So if you look at it, 5x growth in the last 10 years that NBFCs have achieved. Similarly, if you look at the HFCs, the housing finance companies, from a AUM of 2 lakh crores, they've grown to around 12.4 lakh crores over the last 10 years, which is more than 6x of growth. So if you look at the 10-year CAGR for NBFCs, it's been 19% and HFCs has been 21%. So NBFCs and HFCs have grown much faster than your banks basically over the last decade,
Sure,
right? So
sure.
moving on, if you look at the market share, what it was in FY 2011 and what it is in FY 2020. In FY 2011, banks had a market share of 81% versus 19% for NBFCs and HFCs. And in FY20, banks had 75% market share and NBFCs had almost 25% market share. So if you look at it, NBFCs has eaten market share of banks in the last 10 years,
Okay.
right? Uh, Moving on, some of the key ratios of NBFCs and HFCs versus banks. So let's look at the first chart on the left hand side. You have NIMs and return on assets basically as a percentage. So if you look at the first two bars in yellow, which are FY18 and FY19 for banks, the NIMs, the net interest margin for banks was in the range of 2.5 to 2.7%, and their
Mhm.
return on assets, which is the gray bar, was negative, like 0.2% and 0.1%. Whereas if you look at for the same 2 years for NBFCs, FY 2018 and FY 2019, the NIM for NBFCs was 5.7 in FY18 and which dropped to 5.1 in FY19. This was because of the ILFS crisis. The margins were squeezed a bit, and because of the restrictions on their borrowing costs going up, so there was a squeeze on their NIMs. Whereas if you look at the return on assets from NBFCs, it was 1.6% for FY 2018 and it was 1.5% on FY 19. Uh, Moving on to housing finance companies, FY 2018 saw their NIMs at 3.1% and it moved up to 3.4% in FY 19, and their return on assets was 2% for FY18 and 1.4% on in FY 2019. So slight dip, but they were fairly positive, right?
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
The second graph on the right hand side talks about gross NPAs of banks and NBFCs. So look at it, the banks have had a higher gross NPA than banks and HFCs. So if you look at it, FY15, the bank NPAs of 4.6% compared to 4.1 for NBFCs and 1.1 for HFCs. Whereas look at the jump in NPAs in FY18. They peaked out at 11.6% for banks in FY18 as compared to 5.3% for NBFCs, and HFCs had a NPA gross NPA ratio of 1.3. Whereas if you move to FY19, the NPA for banks reduced by around 2.5%, we're at 9.1, whereas NBFCs saw a slight increase in NPAs at 6.1%, and HFCs are fairly constant and 1.4% for 2019. So as you can see that banks have a worse NPA ratio than NBFCs and HFCs.
I'm actually quite surprised by this data because it is
Okay.
always believed that NBFCs are known for giving aggressive lending
Yeah.
and to riskier borrowers. But here
Yeah.
I'm seeing that there is a absolutely different projection where bank has higher gross NPAs.
Yes, so banks had a corporate cycle basically from 2015 to 2020. You can say that worst of the corporate cycle played out for banks, because
Hmm.
of which the NPAs topped out. But as
Yeah,
you say that yes, NBFCs lend to a riskier segment, but they price for risk, right?
yeah,
They price their loans higher basically than a bank, so they are able to maintain their NIMs one, and even if your gross NPAs or write-offs are slightly higher, you can still manage if you have better collection mechanism and better underwriting framework or risk management framework.
yeah. So that is the traditional thought which I had. But
Yeah,
in terms of comparing the gross NPAs of bank and NBFC,
yeah,
having banks having larger, but now I know the logic as you said that most of the cleaning of banking system happened during this period, thanks to
yes,
Mr. Rajan. So since
yeah.
2015, the whole banking system is undergoing a lot of cleaning.
Yes, yes. So now the corporate books are fairly clean. So NPAs have dipped sharply. You can see for banks if you look at the recent data, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So moving on to my next slide. This is about the various NBFCs or home finance companies that exist today in India. This is by no means a complete list. I have just given you some top names out of the current NBFCs and HFCs that operate in the market. So you have home finance companies, you have an HDFC Limited, you have an LIC Housing Finance, you have a PNB Housing Finance, you have Canfin Homes, and you have Repco Home Finance. Plus, there are a host of others that also exist and do business. As you know, there are almost 101 HFCs that exist in India today.
Right.
Then you have the typical finance companies which do various products, from a two-wheeler loan to a personal loan to a loan against share and various other products they do. So like you have a Bajaj Finance which is aggressive into consumer durable two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and your personal loan segment. Then you have Cholamandalam Finance, you have Tata Capital, you have L&T Finance, you have Mahindra Finance, Edelweiss Financial Services, and IIFL, right?
Mm.
Then you have the host of other like Magma and all sorts of NBFCs that exist. And then you have the MFIs, which are only the microfinance companies that only lend to the smaller individual loans, basically to the underpenetrated segment.
Mm.
You have Spandana Spurti, Credit Access, Ashirwad Microfinance, Bharat, and a lot of host of other names which are not even listed today, right?
Mm.
And then you have the sector focused NBFCs which only have particular one area of business or lending. Like
Mm.
Muthoot Finance and Manapuram Finance are only focused on gold loans,
Mm. Mm.
right? Sundaram Finance is mostly your commercial vehicle loans, your truck financing, etc.
Mm.
Shriram Transport Finance again is mostly truck finance, and that too mostly used trucks.
Mm. Mm.
And then you have the captive finance companies. So these are like subsidiaries of multinationals and not listed in India. Like you have a
Mm.
Toyota Financial Services, which only finances Toyota cars. It's a subsidiary of Toyota Kirloskar Motors in India. You have Volkswagen Finance, which is a subsidiary of Volkswagen India or Volkswagen Global, basically financing Volkswagen, Audi, and Skoda cars. Ford
Mm.
Credit is a captive finance company of Ford. They only finance Ford cars and dealer funding. And then you have Renault Nissan Financial Services, which finances Renault and Nissan cars or Datsun cars.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
Uh, then I want to take you to 25, 30 years ago. There was a crisis. Like we saw the crisis 3 years ago in 2018 when ILFS failed and when DHFL failed, right? This is a fairly recent crisis everyone knows about. But people do not know that in 1995, 96 to 1998, there was a bigger crisis that happened in India, right?
Hmm.
Almost
Hmm.
4,000 NBFCs were existing at that point in time, and most of them went bust. Only 40 remained.
God. Oh God.
Right, right.
Oh.
So it all started with one fraud, that was CRB Capital Market scam in 1996, which was worth around 1,200 crores at that point in time.
Only.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
1,200 crore scam
1,200
led
crores
to such
was
a certain
was a
profit.
very very big sum at that point in time.
Okay. Okay.
Right, 30 years ago, if you look at how much it would be worth, probably it's going to be
Yeah.
more, if you like to. So what happened, that CRB Capital Market used to borrow money from depositors, individual depositors, and they used to kind of do merchant banking. They used to kind of fund equity shares or loan against shares. They used to invest into stock market. They used to promise very high returns to the investors.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
So at some point in time, the music stopped, the liquidity went out, and they could not pay back borrowers. So, and there was a queue outside their office. People started recalling their deposits, but they couldn't pay, and most of the money they had invested went bust. Right,
Hmm.
they couldn't collect that either. So a lot of depositors in CRB capital markets lost money. Right.
Hmm.
In fact, in 1993-94, they had also got a banking license from RBI, but they could not set up the banking operations because of the condition that they had to have 100 crore net worth, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So they were busy in kind of accumulating 100 crore net worth, and when all this kind of unearthed, the scam unearthed, and they went bust, right? So the
Hmm.
license was withdrawn by RBI before the bank came into operation. So as I
Hmm.
talked about that, this is a statement by Uday Kotak in one of his interviews, that from 4,000 NBFCs that operated during those eras, hardly 40 survived,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So basically rest all shut shop. There were no jobs, because see what happens when one fraud happens.
Hmm.
Lot of the faith that or trust that people have on NBFCs goes away,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Banking or non-banking finance companies is all about a business of trust, because at that point in time, all these were deposit-taking NBFCs,
Hmm.
right? They had taken deposits from the public, and the rate used to be 15% per annum,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So you were doubling your money in 5 years, and people had invested a lot of money. And when the run on the deposits came, when people started kind of asking for premature withdrawals,
Hmm.
there was huge asset liability mismatch, because their assets were invested into lending to corporates and other projects, etc., which could not be recalled overnight. And there was a huge liquidity crisis when people started to kind of go back to these companies and say, we want to withdraw our deposit, or we want to prematurely call back our deposit. These companies were unable to kind of service the depositors, and a lot of people lost money,
Hmm.
right? So the CRB run created the run on deposits, so creating a asset liability management mismatch for NBFCs, right? And this whole entire episode, a lot of these individual depositors lost money. So I have given you some names at the bottom, which used to be very big NBFCs at that point in time, and then today they don't exist any longer. Like Alpic Finance was a subsidiary of Cipla, right? If you spell Alpic backwards, it's called Cipla,
Hmm.
right? CRB, as we talked about the scam. Then you have Anagram Finance, which was Arvind Mills subsidiary or a group company. Apple Finance was again a very big player in the car finance market and the corporate lending market. DCM Finance, Lloyd Finance, Escorts Finance, ITC Classic Finance was a subsidiary of ITC, right?
Hmm.
So the run on the, and they used to be number one in deposits. They have 5,000, 10,000 crores of deposits at that point in time from the public. And 1 month, like the customers who used to send requests exceeded 700, 800 crores
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
prematurely withdraw. So they couldn't kind of pay back that or call that, and they had to infuse money. ITC had to infuse money to pay off depositors, Then you had Mafatlal Finance, Gujarat Lease Finance, Usha Martin Finance, Strachi Finance. So a lot of these names today no longer exist. All of them, in fact, no longer. So there is an anecdote just want to share on ITC Classic. ITC Classic was acquired by ICICI Limited, right? The project finance institution. So they acquired ITC Classic just for the network and the depositor base that ITC had, right? Uh, Plus they ITC guaranteed that they will kind of pay some 350 crores to ICICI Limited. If there were losses, that will kind of take care of those losses for that business, right? The money that was not coming back from the borrowers. Similarly, Anagram also was acquired by ICICI for their network in Western India and North India to an extent. And Anagram paid 125 crores to ICICI to acquire the company. So that whatever future losses will arise, ICICI is buffered from those losses.
Okay.
Right. So I'm selling my company and I'm also paying you the money to take over. Look
Because
at
you
that.
have license. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Moving on, how do you evaluate the performance of an NBFC? More or less similar to how do you evaluate a performance of a bank, but nevertheless, I'll take you through again with this. So, whether it's a corporate focused or a retail focused NBFC, like a bank, you have an NBFC which could be either focused on corporate lending or a retail focused lending or an SME focused lending as well. So secondly, you need to check on the loan growth in the last 5 to 7 years. Look for consistency of loan growth, consistency of revenue growth, etc. Check for cost of funds. The lower, the better. So NBFCs have a higher cost of fund than banks because they borrow for banks, mutual funds, other investors through bonds or commercial paper, etc. So if the NBFC is triple rated, the cost of fund would be slightly lower than a double rated company or NBFC. So you have to look at what's the cost of fund and where are they deploying this money. Uh, Check for
Just one small question on this rating. So if there is
yeah,
any company which is AAA rated,
yeah,
is a normal company, and there is
yeah.
NBFC which is AAA rated, so the interest rates will be different for both the entities?
Slightly different because let's take an example that a corporate which is AAA rated does not carry that risk of lending. The risk is
Yeah.
only on their business, right? That if the business fails. Whereas for a lender, it is a mix of your the quality of your loan book and
Yeah.
your business model as well. So there would be slight difference between, let's say, a AAA rated NBFC or a AAA rated corporate which accesses funds,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Yes, please go.
So check for NIMs, your net interest margins, how have they been moving over the last 5 years? So if your cost of funds are lower and your lending is to a certain segment at a certain rate, your NIMs should be stable or moving up. But if your cost of funds are higher, it will impact or pressure your NIMs basically. Then comes your return on assets. You have to see that how is the return on assets doing, and the higher the better, as we say. Anything above 1.52% is a good return on assets for NBFCs, basically. Then you look for return on equity, how it has moved over the last 5 years. There should be consistency in the return on equity that's the company is clocking or the NBFC or HFC is clocking, right? And then you see the price earnings multiple where it is trading as compared the share price as compared to the earnings per share should not be expensively priced if you're investing in an NBFC. And you also check for loan disbursements quarter on quarter and year on year. How are they growing, or they're stagnant, or there is a drop in disbursements that the company is facing right now.
Okay.
Right?
Fantastic,
Moving
Chandru.
on. Yeah. When you're investing, look for the book value and the price to book. The lower, the better, right?
Okay.
Like you had an anomaly some time back, let's say in the last 1 to 1.5 years, where a lot of these NBFCs were trading below book value. So it was a good opportunity to kind of invest into a strong NBFC which was not impacted by the ILFS crisis to that extent, but was trading below book value.
Okay.
Right.
Mm.
So it's like book value. Anything trading below book value tells you that it's trading below the intrinsic value of that company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you also look at pre-provisioning operating profit. How is the pre-provisioning operating profit grown? And then you look at your provisions after that. How are the provisions growing, right? As compared to the loan growth or revenue growth, how much is the provision growth? And you check for gross and net NPS. Lower they are, the more profitable the NBFC is going to be.
Mm.
Right. Then you check for provision coverage ratios, the same as you check for banks. That higher provision coverage ratio allows for higher cushion to take on those losses, right?
Mm.
Otherwise, if you have lower provision coverage ratio, you will have to take that provision coverage higher, which will impact your profits at the end of the day. And
Mm.
then your capital adequacy ratio comes in. Uh, the higher the capital adequacy, the more stronger the balance sheet it
Mm.
is. Right? And gearing or leverage, how much you have borrowed against your capital, right? Should
Mm.
not be too excess. That
Mm.
that the lower the gearing, the better the NBFC, and it has room for more borrowings if he wants to borrow for business growth.
Okay.
So, any questions you have?
So I have one conceptual question with respect to asset liability management. So
Yeah.
typical NBFCs, they borrow for a shorter tenure and lend for a longer tenure.
Sometimes there are asset liability mismatches, but I think in the last 2 years, a lot of this has been corrected.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So NBFCs now have longer term maturities as well for their borrowings, and they have shorter term maturities. Basically, earlier there was a lot of mismatch, but when this ILFS crisis happened,
Hmm.
it had a major impact on the NBFC sector, that mutual funds and banks stopped lending to NBFCs. They were not able to kind of trust anyone at that point in time. So
Hmm.
which resulted in some ALM mismatches, but I think over the last 2 years it's been corrected to a far greater extent, and today there is very little ALM mismatch that probably exists.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
So, there's a
So
concept in mutual fund industry called duration, which
yeah,
talks about the average duration of the portfolio of the bond fund,
yeah,
which is essentially the how much, what is the tenure
the
of the
the
paper,
balanced tenure of that paper. Yeah,
balance tenure of the paper, correct.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
in case
yeah,
of NBFC also, though, if I see the typical tenure of an
yeah,
NBFC loan in India, which they have
yeah,
borrowed, and
yeah,
typical when they have lended, so what will
yeah.
be those in terms of number of years?
So basically, the max I think they will borrow through bonds is 4 to 5 years.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
So basically, there are like shorter duration borrowings as well. Like you go and take commercial paper at 4-5% for a AAA rated company if it's available cheap. So it takes care of your short term requirements, because you also have installment payments coming in every month. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they then match it out to your installment payments over the next 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, and
Hmm.
based on that they go out and borrow money, right? So most, if you look at the investor presentations of all the NBFCs, they give out one slide on the ALM, borrowing and lending management, and
Okay,
the match they have in 1 year to 5 years.
okay, okay.
So
Got
that's
it.
a very good slide to see in an investor presentation for an NBFC.
Okay, got it. Got
All right.
it.
So moving on to my case study, what I have today this time done a case study of comparison of two finance companies which are listed in the Indian markets, and
Hmm.
how they compare on various parameters. So one of them is Muthoot Finance, which is a sector focused NBFC like only gold loans, and you have an M&M Finance, which is like into vehicle finance, tractor finance, and personal loans, etc., and other kind of fundings as well, home finance as well. Right? They have a division of home finance or affordable housing finance as well, as we call it.
Hmm.
So I have tried to compare both in terms of various parameters, and let's see how they stack up against each other.
Yeah, yeah.
So on the first table on the left, you have Muthoot Finance. So if you look at the revenue this is rupees in million, INR in million. So revenue for Muthoot was FY 21 was 115,664 million. And if you look at the revenue for M&M Finance was slightly higher at 121,705 million, right? So M&M is slightly higher in terms of revenue. And if you look at the FY20 revenue for both, it was 97,000 odd crores for Muthoot, and it was 119,964 crores for M&M. So if you look at the growth, Muthoot has a 19% growth on revenue for last financial year versus 1% growth for M&M.
Arvind,
Let's move.
a
Yeah,
small question on this. When you say revenue of this, that means it's
yeah,
net interest earning, or it is interest
yeah.
earning and expense will have the interest expense?
So basically, this is your interest earnings plus your fee income,
Okay,
uh, and expenses will have your interest cost,
got it.
basically, right?
Got it.
So moving on to the second line, which is your expenses. So Muthoot had almost 61,800 million in expenses for the year, last financial year. Uh, M&M same time had 75,000 million in expenses. And expenses growth for Muthoot was 17%, and for M&M Finance there was 8% saving on their cost on the expenses, right? Pre-provisioning operating profit, 53,866 crores for, sorry, 866 million for Muthoot, compared to 46,648,000 for M&M Finance. So look
Hmm.
at the difference. The revenue is higher, the pre-provisioning operating profit is higher because of the expenses being higher than Muthoot,
Right, right,
right?
right.
So the growth in pre-provisioning profit was 20% for Muthoot, for M&M Finance, and growth in pre-provisioning operating profit was only 6% for Muthoot, right?
Out of
Then
this expense of around say 75,000, 75, I mean,
1,000 million, yeah, yeah,
7,505 crores.
yeah, yeah.
How much percentage will be attributable to interest expense approximately? Because
So the
that takes
interest cost,
some.
so the interest cost for NBFC is around 8 to 8.5%, I would say, right?
Only 8.5%. No, no, no. I'm
Yeah.
talking about how much of the percentage of expense is the interest cost.
So percentage of expenses, I don't have it exactly. Maybe let me check and come back to you. I can probably in the meantime, once we finish, we can also have that.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Yes,
And I'm
yeah.
just trying. I become audacious at
So
times.
the cost, so the cost of borrowing ranges between 7.5 to 8.5, 9% for a triple A to double A rated company,
Okay, okay. And
right?
their yield typical realization is what percentage?
So yield depends on which segment you are lending to. If you're
Yeah.
lending to a home finance segment, your yield would be lower. But if you're lending to a used car or a used truck, it will be higher, right? So it depends on what sector, what asset are you financing. Your yield will depend on that basically.
So
But
my
NBFCs, sure,
then
yeah, go ahead.
M&M Finance typically should have a higher yield than Muthoot Finance, right? Because Muthoot is gold loan, so their yield will be lowest, right?
So we will see that as we go forward.
Okay, okay, great.
Okay,
Thanks.
right.
Let's continue.
Okay, so basically, if you look at the provisions, 255 crores for Muthoot Finance and almost like 4,000 crores for M&M Finance for
Hmm.
FY21. Look at the
Hmm.
difference, like, so, okay. So for Muthoot, the provision jump was 36%, but for M&M Finance, the provisions jumped 72%, double
My
of
goodness.
what it was for Muthoot, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
profit after tax, 3,118 crores,
Hmm.
3,818 crores for Muthoot for the year, a jump
Hmm.
of 21% compared to previous financial year, and M&M was 780 crores versus
Yeah.
1,085, so drop of 28%,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
look at the business model itself tells you that which is a strong business to be in, right?
Hmm.
Then you go on to the EPS. Muthoot had a EPS of almost 95 rupees. And M&M Finance had a EPS of 7 rupees. If you look at the share price, Muthoot as of let's say 2 days ago was 1487. M&M Finance is 160 rupees. So the PE ratio for Manappuram is slightly lower than 16, and for PE for M&M Finance is 23. Right?
But
Market
why
cap.
why
Sorry,
is it
go ahead. Why is PE higher? Your question? Is that your
why
question?
is Muthoot P lower? I mean, M&M PA is higher, it's okay. I mean, that's market, but why is Muthoot,
Okay.
it's the relatively better performing company fundamentally? Why is it trading at a lower level?
So basically, there will always be mismatches in the market. People usually have a liking for companies which are favored in the market. So M&M is a much more favored name in the market. So it probably is commanding a higher P, right? Muthoot is a very steady or very boring business,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? Just the customer gets the gold, he gets the money, and he pays off. And if it doesn't pay off, Muthu sells the gold and recovers the loan.
yeah,
So
yeah,
people have this fancy for some excitement. So they feel that M&M is a much exciter business to be invested in, whereas Muthoot is a very boring business to be in.
I
So
got
so
it.
look at market cap, 60,000 crores for Muthoot and only 20,000 crores for M&M Finance.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? So let's go to the loan book. Purely identical loan book, 58,800 crores for Muthoot and M&M 60,000 crores. So hardly any difference on the loan book side.
Hmm.
Book value 388 rupees for Muthoot Finance and 119 rupees for M&M Finance. Muthoot's name 14% and M&M name 7.7. So now you get your answer that what is different in Muthoot's business model, right? Their borrowing cost is 8% or 8.5%, but the NIM is 14 odd percent. So their yield is almost 20 to 23%,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I hope you got your answer that on the yield of loans. Whereas if you look
yeah,
at the M&M's yield, cost of fund could be probably 8% and 7.5% or 7.7 as NIM. So their yield would be around 15 to 16% on the
yet,
loans.
yet they are trading expensive than Muthoot.
Yeah. So there will be always these valuation gaps that smart investors will see and they will pick up stocks those are undervalued.
Yeah, yeah, I got your point.
That's
Yeah,
that's what a value investor chases,
yeah, yeah,
right? So gross NPA is 1.08% for Muthoot and 8.96% from M&M,
yeah.
right? Look at the NPAs, almost 9x of or 8x of Muthoot, right? Net NPAs, Muthoot has zero net NPAs, uh, and M&M Finance has almost 4% on net NPAs, right?
So when
Return on,
you say that, sorry to interrupt you, when you say
yeah,
that gross NPA is almost 9% M&M, that means the book size of
yeah,
around 60,000
60,000
crore,
crores, yeah,
almost 9% of that 60,000 crore is a doubtful debt.
yes, which is
Okay,
which is more than 90 days due, past due,
okay, okay, got it.
right? Uh, and look at return on assets, 8% for Muthoot and 0.4% on M&M Finance.
Hmm,
Return on
hmm,
equity, 28%, close to 28% for Muthoot Finance and 2.5% from M&M Finance.
hmm,
Huge difference in terms of quality of loan book and return on equity or
hmm,
assets, right?
hmm,
Price to book 3.8, price to book 1.3. So you look
hmm,
at the price to book that it's trading expensively as compared to M&M, but the gold finance business doesn't require you to kind of borrow money very frequently. So that
hmm,
is why you see this price to book at a very high 3.8%, 3.8
hmm,
times,
hmm.
right? The
Got it.
business is so self-sustaining and it generates a lot of free cash flow that you are building that equity and you don't need to borrow again and again to kind of build up your capital adequacy,
Right.
right? Uh, So capital adequacy 27% for Muthoot and 26% from M&M. So neck and neck there. Gearing for Muthoot 2.7 versus 4x for M&M Finance. So lower gearing is always better for a NBFC. Muthoot is at 2.7 and M&M is at 4x, right? Market cap to loan book, Muthoot is trading at 1x, whereas market cap to loan book is 0.33% for M&M Finance. So market is giving a higher weightage to Muthoot because of the quality of loan book, right?
Right.
Then we move on to a ratio of which is pre-provisioning operating profit to revenue. 47% of revenue converts into operating profit. But for M&M Finance, the pre-provisioning operating profit to revenue is 38%.
Okay.
Right? And then you have profit after tax to revenue. 33% is profit after tax to revenue for Muthoot Finance, and only 6% of profit to revenue contribution by M&M Finance.
Got it.
Moving on, I have given you the share price comparison over various time frames in this slide. So look at the 1 year time frame. M&M Finances has kind of outpaced Muthoot in the last 1 year in terms of the share price returns.
Right.
In two years, Muthoot is streets ahead of M&M Finance when it comes to share price returns. In 5 years, it's the same story that Muthoot has been outclassing or outpacing M&M Finance when it comes to the stock price returns. And in 10 years, obviously, it's also higher.
Yep.
Right. So it tells you that how good is the business. It tells you how share price movement is basically. Right. So some of the I have listed down some of the HFCs and NBFCs here, and what is their loan book and what is their net profit for last year, and what is the net profit to loan book ratio. And some of these NBFCs are even larger than some of the banks that we have today. Right. So if you look at HDFC Limited, it is almost 2.5 times of a Kotak or a IndusInd Bank. Right. So their asset or loan book is 4,85,000 crores. Right. And they had last year a profit of 12,000 crores, which was 2.5% of the loan book. The contribution to PAT was 2.5%. So if you look at it over from all these, the contribution of PAT to loan book varies between 1 to 3%. Right, but there are a couple of outliers as we go down the list. You will see that. So LIC Home Housing Finance is like not even half the size, and it's number 2 housing finance company in India. It's not even half the size of HDFC Limited at 2,28,000 crores and profit only 1/4 of HDFC Limited. Right. PNB Housing Finance at number 3 or number 4 is 1/3 or probably 1/4 of the size of LIC Housing. Right. Indiabulls Housing Finance 65,000 crores loan book. Canfin 21,000, 22,000 crore loan book. 456 crore of PAT. Awas again is a housing finance company, affordable housing finance, just 7,500 crores of loan book and 290 crores of profit after tax. So these are the top 6 housing finance companies. And then you have the generic NBFCs after that, which is your Bajaj Finance, which is the largest NBFC today. Their loan book is around 113,000 crores, but total assets around 140,000 crores. So various assets add up to 140, but purely the loan book is 113,000 crores. Last year profit was 3,956 crores, 3,956 crores. And net profit to loan book was 3.5%. Right. Then you have Shriram Transport Finance, which is with a loan book of 108 lakh crores, 2,500 odd crores of profit, 2.3% profit to loan book ratio. L&T Finance 87,000 crores of loan book, 950 odd crores of profit. Tata Capital 77,000 crores of loan book and 1,100 odd crores of profit. Cholamandalam Finance 65,000 crores of loan book, 1,500 odd crores of profit. M&M Finance 60,000 crores of loan book, 780 odd crores of profit. Muthoot 59,000 crores of loan book and 3,800 crores of profit for the year. Aditya Birla Capital, 59,726 crores of loan book, 1100 odd crores of profit. Mass Financial, 40,000 crores of loan book, 146 odd crores of profit. Shriram City Union Finance, 31,000 odd crores of loan book, 1,078 crores of profit. Sundaram Finance, 29,000 crores of loan book, 800 crores of profit. Manapuram, 26,000 crores of loan book, 1,700 odd crores of profit. Edelweiss, around 15,000 crores of loan book, 123 crores of profit. Credit Access Grameen, which is an MFI, is 11,000 crore of loan book and 180 crores of profit. And Magma Finance, around 11,000 crores of loan book and 560 odd crores of loss. So if you look at the net profit to loan book ratio, you will see that Muthoot Finance at 6.5% stands out. Manapuram also at 6.5% stands out, and then you have Shriram City Finance at 3.5 and Bajaj at 3.5 and Aavas at 3.9. So these
Okay.
4 or 5 players stand out when it comes to their net profit to loan book ratio, basically.
Okay. Interesting.
Right. So
Very
that's about from my side. So any questions basically you have, I'll be happy to take them.
So, we have heard about a lot of these NBFCs now becoming, either a small bank or bank. So,
Yeah.
is there a natural flow for an NBFC to become a small bank or a bank? Or a lot of NBFC, they don't prefer to become a bank because of certain reasons?
So basically, that's the natural progression that an NBFC looks at to convert itself into a small finance bank or a universal bank if RBI approves your application or gives you the license to operate as a bank. But it's a very challenging task in the sense that when you convert yourself in a bank, the costs really go up because you got to have branches on the ground floor mostly. Whereas for an
Mm.
NBFC, it doesn't matter where your branch is. Secondly, you also have to offer other products that are offered by banks, right?
Mm.
Today,
Mm.
you are just focused on the lending side without a deposit taking franchise. So you also have to then start with savings account, current accounts, fixed deposits. You have to offer corporate or SME loans and other products. Treasury has to be set up, etc. like that. So your operating cost for the first 3-4 years really goes through the roof, right? And you
Okay.
convert into that. So most of the people would love to, but when they look at the cost side, it's pretty kind of daunting for some of them to kind of go for that. Like just
Mm.
to give you an example, that in 2003, Sundaram and Kotak were offered the license to become universal banks.
Mm.
Kotak took that license, and Sundaram only wanted to continue as NBFC, and it has continued the way it is for the last 18 years.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Right. So
Okay.
Kotak initially had a lot of cost in converting itself into a bank. Secondly, we saw two of these NBFCs in 2016 or 2015 or 16 getting a license to convert into a bank, which was Bandhan Financial Services, which got a license to convert into Bandhan Bank, and IDFC Limited, which was an infrastructure finance company, to convert into IDFC Bank or to start IDFC Bank, right? So the lending business was segregated and moved to the bank which was set up. So even today, IDFC is struggling with their cost side. Like cost to income ratio is 76% for IDFC Bank today. Though it is for a different reason, that they had a merger with Capital First and NBFC costs etc. came into the bank's balance sheet. So that is why. So whether there are challenges, there are advantages, and there are also challenges for any company when they convert from an NBFC to a universal bank or a small finance bank.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And once a company converts into from NBFC to a bank, so is the
Yeah.
same license gets converted, or company still continues with the NBFC work and
No,
get into
so
another?
the NBFC becomes a holding company, as we saw on the RBI slide, the slide 2,
Hmm.
and the bank then starts again, and your loan assets are transferred to the bank basically. So
Okay.
like you have Ujjivan Small Finance Bank, but you have Ujjivan Financial Services as the holding company for the bank, basically.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let us spend a couple of minutes on asset reconstruction companies.
Yeah.
So what's the business model of these companies?
So basically, asset reconstruction companies, they buy the non-performing assets from banks and NBFCs. They then work on these assets to kind of resolve these assets by chasing borrowers for collections or through the legal route, and whatever money they are able to collect is then shared on a mutually agreed basis with the lender who had sold that portfolio, and these IRCs, it's normal profit for them as well.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So why did we say that for the last few, especially during the pandemic, a lot of these asset reconstruction companies are facing challenges, and we have seen Edelweiss also prices not growing because of that reason. So what's the story behind that?
So could you repeat your question, please? Sorry.
During the pandemic, we heard about all these ARCs facing challenges, and that's all. And also, Edelweiss stock price was not going up because of those. The fact that ARC is the major business of Edelweiss now. So, what's the story behind it? What kind of challenges ARCs face during these tough times?
So basically, the challenge any ARC faces is that when it takes time legally to resolve that account, right? So we all know that when a legal case gets filed, it will not get resolved in 3 months or 6 months. It usually runs into many quarters of a few years at least, because
Hmm.
there are issues, there are delays, etc. And in pandemic, we saw that everything came to a standstill. NCLT and other legal cases were not heard accordingly. So these challenges were that came up resulted in a lot of these accounts not getting resolved, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
impacted the revenue for these companies. So coming to specifically to Edelweiss, Edelweiss has a lot of these business divisions. Like one is the ARC division, then you have the lending side. So the
Hmm.
lending book, what I understand is more skewed towards your real estate developers and on real estate loans,
Right, right,
right?
right.
So because of which the impact they had on the lending book actually showed on their stock price. So
Okay, got it,
that's what
got it.
I understand of this. Yeah.
So, do we as an investor get to know what is the percentage of composition of lending book through the investor presentation? We can know, right?
Yeah, we will know the breakup of the lending book through investor presentation. That what is the composition of the book, how much of loans to the real estate sector or to your housing finance or to which other sectors the book the lending has been done.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So this is my last question. That if I
yeah,
have to put my money in
yeah,
NBFC sector, then
yeah.
which category of NBFC? I'm not talking about company name from you. Which category of NBFC is relatively safer to bet on?
So basically, India is a consumption-driven story, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, the economy is going to be driven by consumption, right? When I
Hmm.
say consumption, as people kind of move from colleges and universities into the job market, they will consume a lot of these two-wheeler loans to commute from home to office or to probably go out on weekends. So you will have two-wheeler financing that will be there, and as they grow their salaries, they will be consuming consumer durables, whether it's the latest mobile phone, whether it's your washing machines, the LED TVs, or any other gadgets that you can think of, right?
Yeah.
So you go to a dealership, you select the model, you take the financing, and you kind of the model or the product gets delivered to your home.
Yeah.
As you move up in life, you get married, you want to buy a house, you want to buy furniture, you want to buy other things, or a car for that matter. You'll have to get it financed,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So then comes your other requirements. From time to time you want to upgrade to a expensive car, you want to take a holiday abroad, you will consume personal loans, etc. as well,
Yeah.
right? So India, the retail story is there for here to stay for long,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We've got a very young population, almost 50% lower than 25 years of age. So a lot of growth for banks and NBFCs on the retail consumption side,
Yeah.
right? Uh, and housing is one area where everyone wants to have a roof on their head,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So you should look at housing finance companies. You should look at the generic NBFCs which finance these consumer durables, two-wheelers, cars, etc.,
Mm,
or
mm,
personal loans for that matter. And
mm,
thirdly, like the sector focused NBFCs, they have their focus on a particular sector. So if the
mm.
economy has to grow, the commercial vehicle sector has to grow,
Right, right,
right?
right.
So whether it is the smaller commercial vehicles or the bigger commercial vehicles, as the economy grows, there is going to be demand for commercial vehicles. So obviously, all commercial vehicles get financed, right?
Mm,
Most
mm,
of the
mm.
time. So you have a scope of financing commercial vehicles as well, right?
Correct.
So you have to pick and choose your sector focused or HFC or your generic NBFCs where you want to put your money on. But I'm sure that wherever you put your money on, you can make a lot of money if you've chose the right company or the right what do you call the investment.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Uh, is CIBIL rush availability? I mean, because CIBIL is now mandatory literally for everyone to have, and all these fintech startups are capturing CIBIL quite nicely and using it for risk assessment of individuals. And that's
Yes.
also one of the reasons why people are wary about defaults because their CIBIL score will go back, which has a
Yes.
long-term repercussions. So you think the
Yes.
whole industry there's a goalpost shift after CIBIL was introduced and more CIBIL has been used?
Yeah, so people are now conscious of their credit scores. Like there are five credit bureaus in India, leaving aside CIBIL, there are four more.
Yeah.
So basically, and people are now aware that if they don't pay up on time, it impacts their credit score, it
Mm.
impacts their credit history. So the next loan is going to be very difficult if they don't pay up on time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So there was a time before 2003-4 when CIBIL was introduced that credit underwriting for a credit underwriter of a bank or an NBFC was very difficult, right?
Mm.
You had to
Mm.
assess the borrower based on documents, based on your personal talk with the borrower or the field visit that you were doing at that point in time to his home and to his office, right?
Mm.
But but today when you look at it 17, 18 years after CIBIL was introduced, the whole underwriting process has changed completely, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
today, the key growth driver of retail loans is your credit scoring that's available to you.
Right.
Right? At the
Right.
click of a button, you know the entire history of the borrower. Is he paying on time? Is he not paying on time? What's his credit score? Is he worthy of a loan from you or not? Right?
Mm. Mm.
And banks are also making people aware of this credit score because when they go bad, the collection guys when they call up, they will tell that sir, if you don't pay on time or you delay by another 1 or 2 months, your credit score will get impacted, your credit history will be impacted, and it will be updated on your credit history or your credit report, and you may not be able to get your next loan. So people
Mm.
are aware today, more and more aware today, but I think there is still scope that people need to be made more aware of it.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Agree. Cool. So, Arvind, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. What an amazing session. I got my, the basics of NBFC is absolutely correct. Now it's up to me. How do I improvise this knowledge and invest in right stocks? So, phenomenal. Thank you so much for giving this content. And I'm still hungry for more. So, you promised me in the first video, we'll talk about financial services also, like insurance and other services. Whenever
So
you have.
yeah, we can probably do a session on mutual funds and then probably going forward on life and general insurance as well.
Oh, that will be great. That will be
Yeah,
great. So whenever you are ready, I'm always ready to get the
sure.
knowledge and wisdom from you. Whenever you're
Thank you
ready.
so much. Thank you for so much for inviting me for this session.
Thank
And
you.
these are really very helpful to investors. The feedback I keep getting is really wonderful from people who watch this.
Yeah.
And all thanks to you. You're doing a wonderful job uh, making aware small investors how to pick up stocks or how to probably look at sectors and investment opportunities.
Yeah. True. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Arvind. Thanks to
Thank
people
you.
like
Bye-bye.
you who voluntarily contribute to this knowledge building exercise. Thank you. Have
Thank
a
you.
great Have a great
You
day.
too. Thank you. Bye-bye.